Hello there and welcome along to this week's video on horseracing.net, in which we're going to be taking a look at the St Leger at Doncaster. It is of course time for the final classic of the season. So to celebrate, we're going to divert away from the usual offering and looking at the ITV7 and focus in on the Group 1 contest. It's due off at 3:35 at Doncaster on Saturday. We'll be looking through the card one by one, runner by runner, and hopefully arrive at the winner for you. But it's a really good weekend of racing as well. It is, of course, Irish Champions Weekend over the Irish Sea. We've got coverage over on horseracing.net, previews of the St Leger, the Irish St Leger and Irish Champion Stakes to boot as well. So do head over and check that out. And if you are enjoying these videos, don't forget to like and subscribe on this channel, and also follow us on Twitter at horseracing.net. But anyway, we'll get stuck into the action. And we'll be looking at the St Leger runner by runner, 12 due to go to post here. And the betting would suggest that this is a wide open contest. This is being recorded on a Thursday, so the prices may change between now and the time that you're watching it, but hopefully give you a clear enough picture of what's going on. And number one on the card is Berkshire Rocco, Andrew Atzeni in the saddle, Andrew Balding trains. And he's 33-1 at the time of recording. We've seen him 3 times so far this season. He's not been disgraced. He's got some pretty familiar form as well. He's had previous with each of English King, Santiago and Pyledriver, and he's yet to win so far this term. He was a pretty game second in the Derby Trial. He was second in the Queen's Vase and then 4th in the Great Voltigeur last time out. What this tells us is that he's a useful type, but he is well held with plenty of these in the field. He's likely to run his race, but you'd imagine that he's got a lot to find for win purposes. I don't think the trip will be a problem. I think he'll stay the extra 2 furlongs here. And it's worth noting as well that Andrew Atzeni has a great record at Doncaster and a great record in the Leger as well. He's won this race twice already. But for win purposes, Berkshire Rocco, I would pass over him, possibly side with him each way, but I think he's got plenty to prove here. Number 2 is Dawn Patrol. Aidan O'Brien trains and Padraig Beggy takes the ride, and he is very much the O'Brien second string here. He's most notable, I'd say, for his run in the Irish Derby. He was 3rd behind Santiago and Tiger Moth, and he's run twice since. Got off the mark in a maiden contest at Naas in July, and then finished 3rd in a listed contest at Leopardstown last month. That came over this trip in the Vinnie Rowe Stakes. So he is likely to stay, but this is a big step up into Group 1 company. He does have Group 1 form in the Irish Derby, but he was well held by Santiago that day. He's got Padraig Beggy on board, a man for the big occasion, and we know not to write off Aidan O'Brien's 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th strings ever, but it's strictly in terms of the form. He's got a lot to find here. And I would say he's booked in for placings at the very best. He's 16-1, no more than a lively outsider at Dawn Patrol. Number 3 is English King. Ed Walker trains, Tom Marquand rides, and he's a really interesting one. He's 10-1 and potentially arrives here with something to prove as well, which it would be hard to believe if you go back to June when he hinted at being one of the leading lights of his generation, didn't he? He was a brilliant winner at the Lingfield Derby Trial, showed a lot of talent that day, relentless galloping, a great turn of speed, and also suggested that he would get trips like this in time as well. So number 4 is the Irish Raider Galileo Chrome. Joseph O'Brien trains, Shane Cross takes the ride. And in terms of the Leger, this one wasn't really on the radar until about a week ago. He's a rapidly improving type and was supplemented for this race, entered for this race at the beginning of the week, and has been really popular in the betting since. He's 6-1 for the Joseph O'Brien team, very much seeing plenty of support in the market. And he was really impressive over 1 mile and 5 furlongs at Navan last month, won a listed contest by 5 lengths. Relished the soft conditions that day. One who was very much about stamina. He's a son of Australia. This sort of test in the St Leger is going to suit him down to the ground. This is a big step up in class for him though. Steps into Group 1 company, group company for the first time. So it's a huge ask for win purposes for him to step up into the top level. But he appeals as one who is almost certain to find improvement yet. And the fact that he heads here instead of the Irish Leger is potentially a clue in itself for the Joseph O'Brien team. Very much one to consider. Potentially at the prices, 6-1 is more than fair. I don't think you're getting any value there. But yeah, Galileo Chrome, one to take very seriously. Number 5 is Hukum, another improving type. This one for Owen Burrows. Jim Crowley takes a ride, has the really familiar colours of Sheikh Al Maktoum. And yeah, he's a really likeable type, Hukum. He's one who's, again, very upwardly mobile. He's improved in each of his 4 starts to date. And he's won his last 3 as well. And, he was very impressive on reappearance, wasn't he, as well? Back at Ascot in June, he won the King George V Stakes, traditionally a very competitive handicap. He won that really well. Beat Kipps that day. That form looks pretty strong. And then he stepped up on that by routing the field in the Geoffrey Freer Stakes at Newbury last time out. That came over a furlong shy of this trip. That was 1.5 furlongs. But yeah, he looked at a Group 1 performer in the making that day by dispatching of Max Vega. He's very much going to relish this test of stamina. And he's going to need more on his first try at Group 1 level. But he appeals as one who could have more to come yet. And yeah, he's one to take very seriously indeed in the Al Maktoum colours. Remember, the Sheikh is enjoying a brilliant season, Shadwell. They're winning almost everything at the moment. Jim Crowley's in fine form as well. Yeah, Hukum, one to take seriously indeed. Number 6 is Mohican Heights. He is 33-1 for Jamie Spencer and David Simcock. And he's another one who has previous with some of these in the field. He beat Subjectivist as a 2-year-old. Looked a smart juvenile in the making, winning a listed contest back as a juvenile. But he's been held so far this season. He was 3rd behind Pyledriver at Royal Ascot and then never really got into things at Epsom last time out. We haven't seen him since. And this is his first try at the trip as well. On paper, stamina, he should get the trip. But this is very much a big step up for Mohican Heights. He's going to need a lot more than what he's shown at Epsom last time to have a serious say. 33-1, about a fair price for him. Number 7, another outsider. This is Mythical, 50-1. The Aidan O'Brien 3rd string here. Enan McNamara takes the ride. Remember him? He won the Derby on Serpentine. And Mythical's a useful type, and he's running some big races so far this season. He was at the Epsom Derby, finished a long way down the field, and pretty much looked out of his depth that day. He really couldn't get into things at Epsom. He was held in a Group 3 contest last time out. This is his first try at the trip. He's got a lot to prove, Mythical. Very much the O'Brien 3rd string. We can never write them off, as I've said before, but he certainly does have plenty to prove and is the right sort of price at 50. Number 8 is the favourite, Pyledriver, 11-4 at the time of recording for that combination of William Muir and Martin Dwyer. And he's really making a habit of defying expectations so far this season, isn't he? He was a big price when winning at Royal Ascot in the King Edward, the 7th Stakes. He was 20-1, 18-1 that day, and was really impressive. Couldn't follow that up in the Epsom Derby when fancied by quite a few. But we can forgive him that because it was such a muddling race that day. And he didn't half bounce back. In no uncertain terms, he got back up rolling at York last month, won the Great Voltigeur Stakes. Did so by 3.5 lengths. And what's significant about that is the Great Voltigeur is a recognised trial for this race, a Leger. The omens are good for him. 14 winners of the Voltigeur have gone on to win the Leger, none more so than last year's winner, Logician. So the omens are very good for Pyledriver. Technically, he has to prove he stays this trip. The omens, the vibes around the yard, the William Muir team, is that they think he will. I was listening to William Muir on Nick Luck's podcast the other day, or the Luck on Sunday even, and he noted that Pyledriver ran all the way to the line at York and took a while to pull up as well. So you would think that he would stay the trip, but Doncaster is a stiff old test. So he does technically still have to prove that. And I would say as well, I'm not convinced that his form is quite as strong as some of the others in the field, namely Santiago, which makes me think that his price of 11-4 is quite short. At the prices, I wouldn't be touching him myself. My gut feelings that he will need a career best to take this, but he's a very likeable type. He's making a real habit of defying expectations. He's one to take very seriously here under Martin Dwyer, who is a accomplished jockey, veteran jockey now, very experienced. But for me, I think he's best left alone at the prices. Number 9, we have the second favourite, Santiago, Aidan O'Brien. Frankie Dettori rides 3-1 at the time of recording. And he arrives here as the sole Group 1 winner in this field. And that's because he won the Irish Derby at the Curragh in June. And I really like Santiago. I think he's shown plenty so far this year. He's very much proven himself to be a classy type so far this season. He was a convincing winner of the Queen's Vase over this trip at the Royal Meeting, which shows he gets this trip. And then followed that up by showing he's a classy type in the Irish Derby, show he has speed to go with that stamina as well. Had to dig in that day, but got the job done, beating Tiger Moth and Dawn Patrol. He was beaten on his most recent start. That came in the Goodwood Cup, but I don't think there's any shame in that. He was a solid third. He was handed a weight and a beating by those two rivals, but they are high-class stayers. And he could potentially have been stretched by the step up to 2 miles as well. This is much more his game against colts his own age. The 1.6 trip, I think this stiff test will suit him down to the ground. I think he sets the form standard on what he's shown so far, and I'm pretty surprised that he's available at 3s. I think 2s, 15-8 is much more his sort of price, in my opinion. The booking of Frankie Dettori is an obvious positive. He is the man for the big occasion, isn't he? I just think Santiago ticks an awful lot of boxes, and I think the 3-1 available at him is a very good price as well. If he shortens between now and Saturday, perhaps not. But I think if you can get anything around the 3-1 mark, I'd certainly prefer him over Pyledriver, and I think he's the one that they've all got to beat. Number 10, near there now, that is Subjectivist, represents the Mark Johnston team. Joe Fanning booked to ride, and he's a very stereotypical runner from the Johnston team in that he has been kept really busy so far this season. A multitude of runs, lots of useful, smart performances in there, and lots of form that ties in with other rudders as well. He was third behind Hukum at Royal Ascot in the King George V Stakes. He was behind Mogul in the Gordon Stakes, ahead of English King. And then he disappointed in the Voltigeur Stakes. He was well fancied that day. Fancied to run well at least, but he finished 7th of 8, never really got into things, and had something to prove as a consequence, but very quickly bounced back, as a lot from the Johnston yard do. Went to the March Stakes and couldn't have been more impressive. That came over this trip, 1.6 miles, won by 15 lengths that day, galloped them all into submission. If he arrives here in that sort of mood, he's very much one to be reckoned with. My concern would be the quick turnaround. He's had just 2 weeks to recover from that, and that came in soft conditions as well. But if he runs to a similar level, certainly one to take seriously, and he's a lively each way shout at about 14-1 at the time of recording. That's Subjectivist. Number 11, Sunchart, represents the father and son combination of Andy Slattery. He's up against it. He's a 50-1 chance. He's won once so far in his career. That was in a maiden at Tipperary back in October last year. Looked potentially useful when doing that, but has very much struggled since. He was out of his depth in the Irish Derby back in June at the Curragh, finished 8th behind Santiago. Bounced back in a very good handicap since, but he was held again at listed level at Leopardstown last time. That was over this trip. He came second. He was in front of Dawn Patrol that day, and he's a much bigger price than Dawn Patrol. Their form tie in together, so he will stay the trip. But I think that's the only thing going for him. I think he's way out of his depth here. Got plenty to prove at 50-1. And last but not least, we have Tyson Fury, named after the heavyweight champion of the world, of course. 80-1 outsider. He is general price of 50. You can get 80s though on Thursday. Trained by Richard Spencer, a small yard, and with big dreams. And a lot of eyebrows are raised about why he was entered, because he's only run once so far this season. He made a winning debut It came here in a novice contest at Doncaster, over 1.5 miles, and he was really impressive. Caused a surprise that day when winning on debut. That was at 20-1, but there was plenty to like about it. He put a lot of distance between himself and the field, travelled into the race really nicely and won really convincingly. This is about as big a step up as you can get. But he does have that course form under his belt. His connections are hopeful of a big run. You know, at 50-1, he could be in the frame. Just getting in the frame would be a good result for connections. There probably will be other days with Tyson Fury. This is a big old ask on just your second career start. But I certainly wouldn't say he's a total no-hoper of 80s. And I'd rather have him each way than the likes of Sunchart or Mythical. I think he's certainly open to more improvement. He's less exposed than those two. Certainly one to consider if you do fancy one at a big price, but plenty to prove. So they are the 12 runners. As I've mentioned, I think the way to go here is with Santiago. I think he's a class act in the field. And one thing I did forget to mention as well is that English King is also entered in the Grand Prix de Paris. He's been declared for this race on Thursday, but it sounds like he could be heading for Longchamp on Sunday instead. We'll find out sooner to the time. But Santiago, for me, in the St. Ledger, do head over to horseracing.net for previews and the results as they come in, and we'll see you soon.